Alright, hey guys, how are we doing? Back with another video from Mother's Basement, and I'm really excited to check this out because I absolutely hate Dragon Ball Evolution. It was a terrible movie. I remember going to see it with a friend when it first came out, and I'll never forget the fact that the guy behind the counter accidentally gave us 2 tickets for a completely different movie. We didn't notice until just before going in, but oh god, can we swap these? Yeah, no problem. And when we came out, I can't remember what the movie was, but I'm sure we both looked at each other and went, I bet you that movie the guy gave the tickets for was probably going to be better. So, I am looking forward to this. The roast of Dragon Ball Evolution.
It has come to my attention that things outside the basement may not be as fine as we initially thought.
No, they're not.
My general coping strategy in times like this is to stare at a screen with something fun on it until my brain can pretend it's not happening.
Yes.
But when things are this bad, that doesn't always work. And I have to go with my
It's a shame there's not enough decent anime starting at the moment. Or Crunchyroll anyway.
The real world seems manageable when I'm done with it. So, I watched Dragon Ball Evolution.
Why would you do that?
And now, to help all of you inoculate yourselves against the mind-shattering horror of our shared reality, I'm going to talk about it. A whole bunch.
Okay.
Too much, even. I've roasted some absolutely
I haven't watched the live-action Bleach.
anime adaptations in my time, but
I liked the Death Note movie.
Like this. Fullmetal Alchemist, Ghost in the Shell, and even
I like Ghost in the Shell.
Titan with that weird single mom thing, all at least resemble their respective anime conceptually and aesthetically.
Definitely give it that.
Dragon Ball Evolution, meanwhile, completely guts its source
out
material
the window
of all substance, leaving behind only a tattered Goku skin suit hanging loosely on the orange and teal-tinted action movie skeleton of Michael Bay's Transformers and its way too many derivatives. And while the meaningless dramatic camera sweeps, gratuitous slow motion, and seizure-inducing fast-cut close-up action that typify that style didn't work all that well for most things, they are comically ill-suited to martial arts movies in particular. The whole draw of a good kung fu flick is the choreography, which is best appreciated through long cuts and wide, steady shots that emphasize the motion of the actors. Filmed in the Bay knockoff style, even good fight choreography, which this film doesn't have a lot of to begin with, devolves into barely comprehensible slapstick, which actually pairs quite nicely with DBE's goofy-ass script, hilariously awkward performances, terribad special effects, and cartoony over-the-top sound direction. If you're looking for something so bad it's funny, this movie can be a laugh riot. But if you go in as a fan hoping for an exciting big-screen rendition of the father of modern action manga, it's gonna send you into a blind rage in like a minute flat.
So annoying.
That's not an exaggeration. Dragon Ball Evolution opens with this awkward CGI prologue thing that exists solely to regurgitate information that's already in the actual movie.
Yes.
Because I guess they just assumed only idiots would watch this. Fair enough. And in just its second sentence, that prologue manages to sink the entire franchise it's trying to build. It's kind of impressive, honestly.
A warlord named Piccolo came from beyond the stars. Aided by his disciple Ozaru, the evil pair brought the human race to the brink of annihilation.
Even people who actively dislike Dragon Ball can tell you that the only connection between Goku and Piccolo is that they're both from space.
Yes.
But this isn't just any old inaccuracy. By changing Goku's backstory and making him the servant of a Namekian specifically, this movie makes it functionally impossible for its potential sequels to adapt either the
any
Saiyan
of the
or
material,
which is kind of like making Star Wars without the Death Star parts. Of course, only folks already familiar with Dragon Ball will be appropriately disgusted by that, and this movie was meant to reach a broader audience, so just to make sure that everyone else is on the same page emotionally, the film proper begins with almost 30 straight seconds of Justin Chatwin sweating. The real drippy stuff, getting all up in his eyes in super slow motion. That's sure a thing I wanted to look at up close in HD. This is followed by a wider close-up where he looks like he's just high as balls, which turns out he is. A wild Grandpa Gohan.
His face is very much like, what am I doing?
Double, and I'm pretty sure that's what happens next.
First rule is, there are no rules.
Like I said, this style of filmmaking is totally at odds with everything a martial arts film should be.
Yeah, it's so
The movie
weird.
cuts to a different angle for every punch, kick, and goofy-ass reaction,
So,
making it impossible
too many
to follow
cuts.
the flow of the fight or appreciate the sometimes genuinely impressive acrobatics involved. Though, to be fair,
Good
the
camera
erratic
work,
editing
but it
also
just-
does a good
it's
job
too
of hiding
much.
some very sloppy filmmaking. This shot, for instance, goes by so quickly that your eyes don't have time to register this guy, who's definitely Justin Chatwin, going prone against the ropes before he's shown standing upright in the next one, and the shot of Gohan springing back up that follows is likewise so fleeting that you almost don't even notice Justin is very obviously standing on solid ground and
Before
just
going
waiting
back
for his
up.
cue to do this awkward little wiggle thing when
Yeah.
the ropes are shaking. But even Fast Cut no Jutsu isn't powerful enough to hide the Super Saiyan 3 brow bulge from all the blood rushing to his head and hanging upside down, or the god-awful wire food jump side
I love
kick. Okay, I know it sounds
Super
like I'm
Saiyan
nitpicking here,
3.
but I think it's important to establish early on just how bad Justin
Brow bulge.
Chatwin specifically is at pretending to do martial arts.
Yes, he's awful.
Anyone who knows the first thing about Dragon Ball can tell you that Goku kind of needs to be portrayed by a
Yes.
skilled martial artist.
He
Yet
needs to be able to fight.
Only preparation for this role was a 6-week MMA boot camp.
Really?
In other words, he's a goddamn white belt. And with all due respect to white belts, the first step of the journey is one of the hardest. A goddamn white belt has no place playing fucking Goku.
Yeah, that's
son.
mad. That is mad.
Ignoring the stupid grimace on his face, if Justin had actually connected the kick with his knee locked like that,
His
he'd have
face.
spent the rest of the movie in crutches. So he really ought to be thanking Gohan for scaring him off with deadly jewel vapor instead of bitching about it like a sore loser.
Shadow Crane Strike. You fell for it again.
Yeah, well, it's kind of hard to block a move that I can't see.
That's Justin's first spoken line in the movie, and it is completely at odds with who his character should be. Goku takes everything in stride.
Yeah.
Few things excite him more than the prospect of learning a new
Fighting,
martial
like
arts
learning a new
move.
attack.
But
Oh my
generic
god,
American
how'd you
action
do that?
movies need reluctant heroes to do the whole journey thing, and thus one of the most iconic, pure-hearted protagonists in all of fiction must be reduced to a typical whiny teenager. Also a horny one, and while it's already wildly out of character for Goku to be interested in Chi-Chi at all,
Yeah.
the sheer degree of thirst which Justin displays toward this film's version of her is straight up embarrassing.
It's
creepy.
Goku would not
Just watch the way
be
he
that way
touches the camera with
at
his
all.
eyes while imagining her mouth fucking a strawberry.
it's so cringy.
Ugh. Can you get a restraining order against a movie? That whole bit is so gross that it might distract you from the film's pathetic attempt to justify an exposition dump about
Dynamics?
by having a teacher ask a room full of people with driver's licenses how eclipses work.
Yes.
Then again, you can apparently not know that and still be president, but
Oh,
either
damn.
way, I'm getting ahead of myself. I know I've already spent a lot of time harping on the opening scene, but as the film's introduction to its version of Goku, it's kind of key in understanding everything that's wrong with him and it. And I think the way he whines to his grandpa in the greenhouse encapsulates that perfectly.
What friends? Everybody at school treats me like I'm nothing, Grandpa. They push me so far that I want to explode. You know, I could tear them apart with one hand.
Could you?
Teach me how to get the girl. Teach me how to be.
Oh my god, he's so moany.
Normal is also overrated. You must have faith in who you are.
This movie doesn't understand that Goku is a character who people like and want to see on the big screen.
Yes.
It thinks of him only as a superhero power set.
I'm so
and its
glad the
main
anime came
narrative
back.
goal is to take that power set, along with his hot wife,
Piccolo
and
was
give them to
awful
an
as well.
angsty, white teenage geek to whom the presumed target audience can presumably relate. You know, basically just make him Spider-Man, but Goku, and with none of
Yeah.
the things people actually like about either character. Now, to you and I, that's a very obviously bad idea, but you've got to consider things from the perspective of someone who's really dumb, but who thinks
Okay.
that they must be smart because they have a lot of money.
I'll try.
Someone whose only exposure to people with common sense is reading focus test summaries. You know, a Fox executive. And as the Fox exec saw it, hey, nerds like Spider-Man. They made Superman into Spider-Man for that one mediocre WB soap opera, and that shit got like 10 seasons.
I loved Smallville.
And Goku's basically Superman already, so just go out there and fucking give Goku some high school bullies.
Yeah.
Tragedy the shit out of his surrogate father figure. Hurry! We're not printing money fast enough! To be clear, my issue with this isn't necessarily that Goku's been whitewashed. he's an alien. Any casting choice is theoretically valid. And aside from him, Dragon Ball Evolution has more Asian representation in its main cast than any other Hollywood anime adaptation.
I suppose so.
Arguably
Ghost in the Shell, yeah.
depending on how you stretch your definition of main character. And yes, that is incredibly sad. But
I mean, we do explain why she doesn't look Asian in the
Justin's
movie.
look and what it represents about the film industry. It's that in pursuit of that look and the quote-unquote marketable escapist fantasy that they wanted to build around it, the people in charge of this movie abandoned basically everything that made Goku likable and made Dragon Ball successful in the first place.
God, yeah,
A lot
why?
of what's wrong with this movie can be traced back to that ass-backwards marketing-first mentality. And the signs of that executive meddling are so stupidly obvious and poorly handled that at times Dragon Ball Evolution reads more like a parody of this stale formula.
I suppose you could
than
look
a
at it like that,
sincere
couldn't you?
attempt
If
to
they did it
execute.
as a joke,
Take Fully
then
Killed,
fine,
for
but it's too
example.
serious
The way Justin
in
and his
its
grandpa talk about them
delivery.
sets up the expectation that they're mean and hurtful, but relatively harmless, nothing to do with violence over. Yet the very first thing we see Flash Thompson knockoff Gary Fuller do is try to fucking murder Justin with his car in front of everybody.
So stupid.
Also,
So
hey,
stupid.
there's that forehead vein again. Are we sure this isn't supposed to be an Akira movie? Now, high school is something of a lawless hellscape, but it's absurd to think that even the richest, douchiest rich douche could get away with this.
Yeah, like, come
Still,
on.
the power
He just
fantasy
ran over
demands
his
that our
freaking
hero
bike
beat up
with a
bully
car.
and steal his girl, and the film's only got like 20
Oh
minutes
no,
to do that before the
the
actual
fight scene
story
over the
starts.
car.
So this lone instance of
No.
bullying has to be pretty extreme to justify it. Then again, it's a pretty extreme, arguably irresponsible power fantasy to be peddling to angry, socially isolated kids in the first place.
Yes.
I think go quiet at dinner.
Always a quiet one.
It also raises the question of why anyone would be crushing on the kind of girl who'd happily walk off with her arm around an obvious psychopath
Yeah,
who
what
just tried
a
to run someone
bitch.
over. Justin really doesn't seem to care, though. He's so thirsty for Chi-Chi, he can't even get his key up when she's not around. Like, the film makes a big point of showing us that he can't use ki blasts, but then, right after first grade astronomy,
He just
sees a chance
destroys
to impress
everything
her,
that
and
is, opens
suddenly he can
all
blow
of
up in
them.
a whole row of
Yeah.
blockers like it's nothing. And just so you know it's not
The
a
power of
coincidence, the
haughtiness.
same thing happens again when he's trying to learn the Kamehameha.
Every time
And they destroyed the Kamehameha. Just like, ah.
closer. It's me.
What happens after lighting off our torches?
Alright. Power of haughtiness.
Very
Forget Super Saiyan, this boy's super simpin'. Also,
Yeah.
the walker thing is what passes for a meet cute in this movie.
Use your key.
Wait, you know about Key?
Oh my
Yes,
god.
the popular pretty girl is a secret nerd about the same thing he's a nerd about.
Wait, you
Could
know
this
things that I know?
pandering
My god.
be any more obvious?
I thought I was alone.
Note, could Justin be any more overeager?
Hey, I'm having a party tonight at my house.
I'll be there.
Straight away. What
Pretend
is
you
it?
haven't followed home before. Soon enough, we see him getting ready for the party, and with it comes one of the movie's only decent jokes.
Bing. Doesn't it all just pop out?
Beauty awaits.
Sure, it's totally out of character, but anime hair do be like that.
It was funny.
Anyway, because Goku's gotta be Spider-Man, Justin needs to let his adopted dad down in some way right before he's murdered. So, even though Gohan seems like he'd be totally cool with it if he just asked, he sneaks out to the party while
Without
his
asking.
grandpa's busy cooking him a special birthday dinner.
Goku,
Oh.
happy birthday!
Why would Goku be a prick like that?
This is the best birthday I've ever had.
Really?
A few of Gary's goons attack Justin as
Really?
soon as he arrives at the party, but because he suddenly cares about keeping promises to his grandpa again, he can only evade their attacks
Oh, this
and
is
goad
so
them into fighting
grim.
each other. He does the same thing to the boss bully when he shows up, and I know you're all expecting me to meme on this bit now.
Please.
One, that's been done to death in every other video about this movie, and two, this is actually kind of the best fight in the film. low as the bar for that is.
Yep.
You can follow the action reasonably well. A few cuts last long enough to appreciate some of the stunt work, and it's clearly intended to serve as a comic relief bit before Gohan dies.
Yeah, you need to
I'd
laugh
say
before
from
you
how
cry.
many people have laughed at it, that hair slide gag more than succeeds at what it sets out to do.
It's so stupid.
Besides that, I'm more concerned with what this scene does to the characters, because while Justin doesn't lay a finger on the bullies, Chi-Chi doesn't know that. She just walks out to find him surrounded by a circle of her unconscious party guests.
Huh.
And given that context, it's kind of fucked up that she just follows him back inside to flirt without...
Oh yeah, because she doesn't know whether he actually beat them up or not. Huh.
Chi-Chi comes off as this flaky, amoral fight slut who will fall for any guy who can beat up the last guy she fell for. This is apparently motivated by the artificial off-screen conflict that she loves martial arts, but her parents just don't get it, which is literally exactly the opposite of what a Chi-Chi is. As he's busy macking on her,
The characters are just not. They've just got the names, haven't they? That's it.
It's finally time for the plot to happen. Back home, Piccolo shows up looking for the 4-star ball, which I guess has just been in this same house for the last 2,000 years.
Could have established that before.
If he had a way of detecting it, he would have just gone to the party, right? Anyway, it's not there, so he gets pissed and force chokes Gohan, a thing he can apparently do.
Yeah,
before
weird.
dropping the whole ass house on his head out of spite, which is not a thing that would even daze your average key user, let alone kill him, but that's a nerd nitpick, and there's a much more fundamental problem with Gohan's death. The sole purpose of this film's first act is to give the audience enough time to get attached to these characters so we'll feel something.
So we care.
When Gohan dies
We can sympathize.
It doesn't work because everything about this movie is terrible,
Yep.
but it does create the impression that this relationship is the emotional core of the story, which it absolutely is not. And that means you get some big old narrative blue balls when, at the end of the film, our hero uses the Dragon Balls to revive an old weirdo he's known for a week, and not the man who raised him, or even everyone who died because of Piccolo. The final scene of the movie, on the other hand, implies that Justin's relationship with Chi-Chi is supposed to be its real driving force, and the heavy focus on her in this intro does support that idea. But if it was true, you'd think she'd be in the rest of it more? As uncharacteristically eager to brawl as this version of Chi-Chi is, the film only ever uses her as a sex prize for Justin to enjoy. Does a thing. She doesn't get involved in any major fights, and in her few minor ones, she very conspicuously leaves her sports bra unzipped, and her only contribution to the actual plot is getting knocked the fuck out because Goku knows so little about her that he immediately and hilariously fails the doppelganger test. Even though he can sense ki and
he should be able to sense the difference between the two people in a mind.
By now, but that's beside the point. Her character is so completely disposable that the only time Jamie Chung interacts with any other member of the main cast besides Justin is when she's playing Mai in a Chi-Chi costume.
What are you guys doing out here?
Nothing.
Oh yeah, in case you missed it, the random ninja lady who follows Piccolo everywhere is supposed to be Emperor Pilaf's servant Mai. And now that I say it, I'm sure you can see the resemblance.
It's ridiculous.
Mai's hair is basically a bob cut, only longer and not at all, and a trench coat is pretty much exactly the same thing as a skin-tight bodysuit with a boob window. It is downright uncanny how the production design team managed to capture the spirit of her character. Now, the whole Pilaf gang does end up serving
names.
Piccolo
They've just
in the original
slapped them as labels.
But the other two are MIA here because I guess a talking dog ninja and a
Could you imagine?
gremlin were just too unrealistic for a movie where a monkey man kung fu fights a green space alien for magic wish balls. So Piccolo just sort of shows up
Such
out
a way
of
of
the blue,
words.
riding around on a random airship that I think is supposed to be Pilaf's flying base, even though it looks more like Slave 1 by way of Final Fantasy. And aside from killing Gohan, pretty much all he does throughout the film
Piccolo
is
does
occasionally
nothing.
show up at a random
does
place
nothing.
to do evil shit and remind us he exists. Because Piccolo, the antagonist of the movie, doesn't directly interact with Goku, the protagonist of the
At all,
movie,
until the fight.
until the last
Yeah.
10 minutes.
So
of the movie.
annoying.
For the most part, he only talks to his titty ninja about Justin, and then one time he sends some rubber-suited Power Ranger goons
What were
to
they?
attack him, and then one
What
place
were they? What was the whole
conveniently
deal with
negates
them?
their healing factor. And that is maybe the worst thing about this whole film, because while every 90s kid loves both Dragon Ball and Power Rangers,
Yes.
any 90s kid can tell you that Dragon Ball is
not-
nothing like Power
No,
Rangers,
it's not
Mom.
Power Rangers.
You just don't get
They're
it.
not the same thing.
It's a real shame that Piccolo especially doesn't get to do more or play off the other actors,
Yeah.
because James Marsters absolutely kills it in this role, owning every line of dogshit dialogue they gave him.
Much easier to find without the water.
It's clear that this Piccolo fucks. If you read interviews from the movie's release, it's also clear that Marsters cared deeply for the character.
He did.
And for Dragon
He was a
Ball
huge
as
fan.
whole. He immersed himself in
I remember.
the lore of the film.
I nearly got
Yeah,
my
there's
friend
lore. Remember, they were planning
to
make
ask
at
him
least
to
3
sign
of
a
these
Dragon Ball
things
Evolution
in order
DVD
to
because he was a
portray
guest
the
at a
villain
convention,
as
and
sympathetically
once she clocked onto
and
why she
convincingly
didn't,
as possible.
that would have been
And he
hilarious.
even purportedly asked the makeup team to make his head look grosser and wrinklier to better resemble old King Piccolo. Yet for all that effort and talent, all the movie can think to do with him is have him loom into frame like a dollar store Darth Vader and spout
It
vaguely
was a shame.
menacing one-liners.
I remember watching interviews and he was
it's
dead.
not like they couldn't
Looking
have made
forward
room
to,
do
like-
more with him. Both Gohan and Chi-Chi are completely ancillary to the plot, remember, so every scene of terrible flirting and the whole first act could have been cut without changing anything else. And if they'd done that, hey, what do you know? The movie would have started with Goku meeting Bulma, just like the good version
Yeah,
of this
like
story
that
did.
should have been how it
Okay,
was.
to be fair to screenwriter Ben Ramsey, who did personally apologize for writing this, so thanks for that, dude. Feature films are very different beasts from serialized comics. or
I'm
TV
sorry
shows
I
with
wrote that.
totally different narrative constraints that any adaptation
My
will
God.
need to adjust for. But to be even fairer, the biggest constraint is that movies are way shorter than those other things.
Yes,
And
that is
maybe,
true.
Maybe inserting 20 minutes of padding before an already stupid long story begins isn't the best way to solve
excuse me.
that problem. I guess, in a roundabout way, that brings us to Bulma, who, honestly, I don't even know what the movie's trying to do with her. Her personality's all over the place in every scene, and by random chance it does line up with her manga counterpart a couple times when she's oscillating between uncomfortable flirting and petulant outbursts. Other times she's portrayed as a sorta no-nonsense, shoot-first, ask-questions-later rogue-type character who says every other line in an angry whisper, no matter how silly that sounds.
Listen, idiot. If I was the Piccolo, whatever that is, I wouldn't tell you.
Though because subtlety is a foreign concept
motorbike.
to this movie, she ends up coming off more as a unhinged, blue-fringed psychopath than the lovable rogue. I mean, yeah, Bulma also tried to shoot Goku dead when she first met him in the manga, but that was because he picked up and threw her car
Yeah.
while she was in
She
it,
had reason.
whereas her sole motivation for cold-blooded murder here is that he has a thing she wants in his pocket. Also, the whole
Nice.
thing where she calls the Dragon Ball a Prometheum orb and wants to turn it into a power source is just really weird and kind of dumb. The contrast between her manga counterpart's genius intellect and puerile adolescent motivation of collecting the Dragon Balls to find a boyfriend was brilliant, and since basically all she does in the back half of this movie is make goo-goo eyes at Yamcha, it would have fit this version of the character better also than trying to get famous by infinite energy.
They should
Other
have
than that,
just
she's really
made them
more
the
of a
same
plot device.
freaking characters,
Her main
man.
purpose is to whip out the Dragon Radar when it's time for a scene transition.
Right, I
Though
need
they,
something to do. Here we
you know,
are. Let's go.
call it that.
Well, you made a Dragon Ball energy locator.
Dragon Ball Energy. DBE. Catchy name.
Dragon
I
Ball
don't have
Evolution.
monetizable words to properly convey how angry that line makes me, so let's just move on. Acting on Grandpa Gohan's last words, Bulma and Justin travel to find Master Roshi in Paozu City, which is named after the mountain Goku grew up on in the manga for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Like, guys, if East City wasn't vaguely Asian-sounding enough for you, you could have just called it Azuma City, but whatever. There's a brief glimpse of a far better Dragon Ball movie in the scene where they're looking for Roshi. Justin actually acts kind of like Goku, pigging out on a big old turkey leg and being endearingly dumb about stuff.
I have
That's
tried every possible
cool.
film
He should have just been like that the
direction.
whole film.
He's not listed.
You try Master?
The film also manages to sneak in one bit of genuinely interesting world building when its interpretation of Kame House is revealed. A lone, dilapidated brownstone perched atop an isolated rocky outcropping, surrounded by a vast construction pit carved out to make room for more of the crazy future city off in the distance. It's not much, but it feels like there's a story here.
Reference to the Kame House on the island and that.
Reason Roshi chose to live off the grid, and I want to learn more about that. Although all of it flies out the window as soon as we actually meet him.
Yeah.
Chow Yun-fat playing Roshi should have been an easy slam dunk for
It should have been, but it just doesn't land.
Cast, an all-around fantastic physical actor, and while it has no bearing on his performance, he's also just a great dude in general. Sadly, the camera work and editing conspire to absolutely butcher his impeccable stunt work, bringing him down to the level of the goddamn white belt Goku for most of the film, and speeding up the one halfway decent long shot of him until his skillful moves become an incomprehensible blur. The other thing that strikes me about that shot is just how bad it sounds. Like, why does Goku grunt faster when he punches faster? That's not how breathing works, guys. You should know this. You do it literally all the time. That said, I can't chalk all of the problems with Roshi up to bad editing and filmmaking, because when he's called on to express emotions other than fighter stuff, Chow Yun-fat tends to overdo it a bit.
I am Lieutenant Roshi, the principal!
My grandfather is dead.
This isn't bad acting, per se. He's just a very animated,
cringy.
But when everyone around him delivers their lines with all the energy and charisma of a department store mannequin, and he's literally the only member of the main cast who knows how to act with his hands, he ends up coming off as a bit of a bug-eyed lunatic by comparison.
Yeah.
Finally, I can see you. You are the key. Come on, go handle it. That's why he trained you.
Roshi's defining character trait in the original series was his purpose.
They do have the magazines, don't they?
The pious mentor archetype, which even in the original anime was more eye-rolling than funny a lot of the time. But this movie's half-hearted way of dancing around it is somehow even more uncomfortable.
Bikini Quarterly?
Oh, this collector's edition.
Leave your hand there another second, and you'll lose it.
Let's go.
Look, either embrace his shameless side for the fans who enjoy it, or write it out of the film for those who don't. Flimsy compromises like this leave no one happy. Adding insult to injury, they don't replace all the missing personality with anything of substance. This Roshi's just a generic, wise old Asian guy with some quirky mannerisms, pretty much the exact kind of character the original was made to spoof. With Bulma having been downgraded to clueless sidekick, Roshi takes up the mantle of the team's resident Dragon Ball expert, which mainly involves telling us things we already know in a vaguely mystical-sounding manner.
7 Dragon Balls must be found.
We know that.
All will be bound.
That's a real first draft ancient prophecy.
Cool.
One, which I guess makes sense because it's also completely irrelevant to the story of the movie. The balls contribute exactly nothing to stopping Piccolo in the climax, and in fact, by gathering them, Justin and the gang only end up helping him with his evil plans. And there's so many loose ends left dangling across the various Studio Butchered revisions of this script that I genuinely cannot tell if the prophecy is supposed to be subverted in some way, or they just forgot about it. Either way, in the movie as is, it's mainly there as an excuse for Justin to have these cheesy apocalyptic visions whenever he picks up one of the balls, which are, sadly, the only even remotely interesting thing the movie does with any of them.
Everything else is just so boring.
In the original manga, the Dragon Balls were a pretty ingenious plot device that allowed Akira Toriyama to whisk his heroes off to whatever far-flung corner of the world he wanted to dream up next, and tell basically any story he could imagine there. The early
as long as they find the Dragon Balls,
driven by the joy of
stories be told around them.
Crazy nonsense they'll have to deal with to get the next ball. And this movie could have been that, but building fun side stories and memorable set pieces around the balls would have taken time that it thinks is better spent on vapid high school bullshit, so instead most of them just sort of show up, like fall in a hole, find a Dragon Ball. Evaporate a whole lake or burn down a village off screen, Dragon Ball. Play a 5-minute lava level, which I'm just now realizing was supposed to be Fire Mountain.
Huh.
Yeesh. Dragon Ball. Literally just rummage through an old man's garbage.
Find a Dragon Ball.
This is
There's no adventure.
some of the most profoundly unsatisfying storytelling
no adventure
I've
at
ever
all.
seen in anything. And for most of its second act,
You imagine writing
when
that.
we meet
But
Roshi
they need to find the Dragon Ball,
Chi-Chi's
so,
doppelganger, it's kind of all the movie is.
Having rummaged through a cupboard.
follows
Okay.
the manga's structure,
Finds it.
using the Dragon Radar to drag our heroes wherever the plot is, and having them go train whenever that's not happening. But then, when they get to those places, there is no plot to be found, only terrible dialogue and a mounting sense of disappointment. To break up the monotony, in theory, at least.
In theory.
The act is interspersed with cutaways to Piccolo saying, "Hi, I'm Piccolo. I'll be important."
Remember me,
And a
I'm the
couple
bad
sides
guy in
where our
this
heroes
movie.
Conveniently run into Chi-Chi so we can
Don't-
get more
don't
of
forget
this
me now.
scintillating romantic chemistry.
Come to the tournament in Toy-San. Maybe we can find some time to mix it up.
The closest thing to a story development that happens in this stretch of movie is the introduction of Yamcha. He doesn't actually do anything.
Anything.
Like, he drives the team
He's
around,
just
but
there.
Bulma was already doing that. His car contributes more to the plot than he does, but he's there. There's this one pretty funny gag where he goes in for a fist bump, and Roshi thinks he's attacking him, and he delivers this one line pretty good.
You're nothing but a low-life bandit.
Yeah, but what with the ladder?
Real shame about the rest of his lines.
Peace and right. Just ride my neck.
It doesn't help that most of his dialogue has very obviously been dubbed over in post, which makes his already awkward lines sound even more jarring. Yamcha's presented as this flippant, self-assured surfer bro douchebag who cares for nothing but money and has a way with the ladies, which is a slight deviation from the manga's
Yeah.
gynophobic but otherwise brave and serious lone wolf martial artist whose ambition exceeds his ability. Seriously, were they trying to make every character the exact opposite of that character? Even Justin treats Yamcha like an afterthought when he finally relays his visions of doom to Roshi.
You will kill you. And Bulma. And Yamcha.
Is that a hint of excitement I hear?
My God.
After all the balls
Everyone
are
else,
accounted
ooh,
for, Roshi's
but
like,
Yamcha,
oh shit, it's
oh."
almost time for the climax, and we haven't established any of the things we need to use in it. So they go to Toy-San to do that. Roshi asks his old master, Sifu Norris, to prepare a containment vessel for the Mafu Ba. Norris responds, "Oh no, that'll kill you. Are you sure?" And Roshi's like, "Have you fucking seen our Goku? We are doomed. Besides,
Yeah,
Dragon Ball,
we-
that is meaningless."
We need
She's there,
something
too,
else.
during the tournament thing she mentioned. She fights Mai in front of some confused extras for a couple seconds before getting her blood stolen. Then Justin shows up to say congrats and walk her up the arena steps where the camera can get a better view down her top.
Yeah.
No, I'm here for something else.
Cleavage. Cleavage, 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 cleavage.
Actually, you're one of the reasons why it's so important.
That line made it through 5 script revisions. Also, the
Oh my God.
extras sparring match that's happening behind them is somehow the most coherently shot fight in this entire movie.
Because the
and
cameras
that's
aren't
just
going all over the place.
Incredibly sad. As is the film's rushed attempt to establish a romance between Yamcha and Bulma.
I'm not so bad once you get to know me.
Nice music in the background. Whoa, wait.
We cut back from whatever that was to Roshi and Justin training, and oh boy was it a mistake to put Chatwin's flaccid fake Tai Chi in the same frame as the real deal. All of a sudden, Roshi's like, "Hey, the Kamehameha's the thing that you gotta learn?"
Yeah.
Which Justin responds, "Right, my grandpa told me about that. It has always been an important plot point that I was aware of. We just never brought it up."
Oh, look at
Roshi
it. This is
shows
just
Justin
ridiculous.
how it's done, then he shows the audience what real romantic chemistry looks like.
I will see you in the morning.
On a completely unrelated note, Chi-Chi then pokes her head in to help Justin train. He gets it, then gets some, and then
Aw,
Mai
yeah.
finally shows up to give you a new nightmare and/or fetish before whisking the Dragon Balls off to green screen land. Though not before firing off a laser blaster thing that nearly kills Goku
Yeah, but
in
it-
a single shot.
those are weird
which is
guns.
like the least Dragon Ball thing ever, but luckily the Kamehameha doubles as a defibrillator in this movie. An idea that Akira Toriyama apparently liked because he made it canon in Resurrection F. While Roshi's busy saving him in the living world, Justin meets his grandpa at the threshold of the other one, who sends a bit of a mixed message by pulling this spooky bullshit.
It's not your time, Goku. There's much left to do.
Then he takes advantage of this rare parting of the astral veil to tell Justin a thing he's already told him.
Grandpa, how do I defeat Ozaru?
Always have faith in who you are.
This vague advice is the closest thing Dragon Ball Evolution has to a running theme, in that it is the sequence of words that comes up most often in its script.
You must have faith in who you are.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Speak to that theme in any meaningful way. In fact, it's not even what stops Ozaru. That would be Roshi's death, shocking Justin back to his senses. And between that, the tragic dick move he pulls on his grandpa, and his hormone-powered ki attacks, the movie's subtext much better supports the alternate theme of always think of your loved ones, but the Fox execs probably figured that wouldn't resonate too well with their imagined audience of friendless nerds. So instead, we're left with a generic refrain of just be yourself. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself again. Once Justin comes down from his post-resurrection orgasm, the gang, minus Chi-Chi of course, hops in Yamcha's Jeep to go stop Piccolo from summoning Shenron. In this film's lore, that has to be done at a special mystical location called the Dragon Temple, which rises up from a barren rocky canyon when all 7 Dragon Balls are gathered there. And while that's not exactly faithful to the source material, I do think it's a decent cinematic conceit. The temple's design is pretty cool and suggests a long history with all those eroded dragon statues running up its towering spires, even if the CGI used to render it all is a little early 2000s for a late 2000s movie. Speaking of bad CGI, it turns out Yamcha's car can fly. That's neat. Weird they didn't use it to get the Dragon Ball in the volcano, but whatever. The flying car lets them get close enough for Roshi to attack with the Kamehameha, though Piccolo's able to fire back and their beams clash. The resulting blast looks pretty cool by this movie's standards and knocks the Dragon Balls out of the temple, but it also sends the Jeep careening into the ravine below, jettisoning Roshi in the process and sending an avalanche of rubble crashing down on his head, which he immediately brushes off like it's nothing, further emphasizing just how lame Gohan's death really was.
Damn.
Before exiting the vehicle, Justin finally takes a second to dawn.
He has a mountain fall on him, and the guy has a house.
Which he found in the wreckage of his grandpa's house at the start of the movie. Then he steps out to fight in a moment of tepid fan service that comes a good 50 minutes after anyone who might appreciate it would have already left the theater. Still, Goku is finally
I really walked out
in almost the Goku shirt and everything. And after an hour of waiting, we're finally gonna get to see our hero and villain trade blows.
All right.
But first, they must trade words.
You bear witness to my glory. I compel Shenlong, grant me the power to rule this diseased rock.
I will defeat Ozaru, and I'm here to destroy you.
Okay, can I take back what I said about wanting more character interaction? This limp turd is only dragging the glorious King Piccolo down.
When the blood moon eclipses the sun, you will become Ozaru.
My God.
The eclipse happens, and despite Justin's best and most hilarious efforts to hold it in, nothing can stop the shitty CGI from oozing out of him. And the effects really only get worse from there. Originally, Ozaru's design was totally, bafflingly different from the manga. Like, it made Human Teeth Sonic look downright sensible by comparison. And much like that other abomination, it had to be changed at the last minute after a very predictable backlash. It's obvious that the likely already overworked and underpaid effects team didn't have the budget or will to live left to actually deposit the new design into more than a few seconds of live-action footage. So when Justin gives chase to take the last Dragon Ball from Bulma and Yamcha, they can only sort of imply he's there by staring and screaming at something off camera. They didn't even have time to decide how big he's supposed to be. In some shots, he looks
all over the place,
like his anime counterpart, but
and then he's just like a normal person.
Taller than the other actors. And then for some shots of his legs, they just use a regular guy in boots. These contradicting images are cut together so rapidly that it's straight up dizzying. I don't think I've ever seen a less convincing creature effect in a Hollywood film. The scene built around it
it's
isn't much better. It kind of feels like the other characters are competing to see who can do the most action movie cliches the fastest before the movie ends. After they run into the caves, Yamcha stops and does this old thing.
Go.
Go!
My God, he's a hero now.
Wastes a lot of time they both could have spent getting away. Bulma throws him a gun to defend himself, but then the American Saiyan in Toyson clever girls him through a solid rock wall before he can actually do anything with it. Outside, Roshi makes Piccolo vibrate uncontrollably with the... His obligatory dramatic mentor sacrifice doesn't actually accomplish much beyond winding Piccolo for a few seconds, but that's conveniently just enough time for him to grab the rampaging Justin's attention and pass on one more nugget of wisdom before passing on himself.
Yourself.
Can't beat with fists. Only with faith.
It's not quite enough to stop Justin from choking the remaining life out of him, but after that, he gets real torn up about doing it and has a revelatory montage. And I shit you not, to show him changing back, they literally just play the animation of him transforming backwards. And that's not the only poorly made thing they lazily reuse here.
Impossible.
Something my grandfather taught me.
Here we go.
First rule is, there are no rules.
Okay, reincorporating lines to make your script seem cleverer than it is a pretty stale and lazy writing trick to begin with, but that doesn't even make sense as a response to the thing he said?
No.
Try a little harder,
Wouldn't
please.
it make more sense to say the one thing his like grandfather's been saying to him the whole time in his visions and that, and then he could be like, never mind.
With the two of them flipping all over the place and the editors moving at an average of like 2 cuts per second, this fight is already pretty much impossible to follow on its own, and the film makes things even more confusing by cutting back and forth between it and Bulma battling Mai in the caves, so she has something to do. When we cut back, Justin and Piccolo can suddenly fly, I guess, and after trading a few blows, they knock each other through some rocks in what's probably the most Dragon Ball part of the movie.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, you see them flying through stuff, and that's Dragon Ball.
Cut back to Bulma as she tries to bamboozle Mai by tossing her capsule bike at her. It doesn't work, but luckily Yamcha did that thing earlier, so now he can show up and dramatically save her at the last second. Back in the fight that actually matters, relatively speaking, Goku finally understands what his grandpa was trying to tell him all along, I think.
You think? Maybe.
I am Goku. I am Ozaru. To be at one with myself, I must be too.
Hey, can I get some of whatever he's smoking? Justin charges up his ki for one final attack, and Piccolo responds in turn. Finally, he's doing the thing.
My God.
This film has one last chance to make the anime real. We're gonna have a big screen beam clash.
No, we're not. Bang.
Tommy, damn it, what the fuck was that? Why did he fire a beam if he was just gonna jump up at him and punch him anyway?
Very valid.
Why can't this movie get anything right? The beam clash is like the simplest Dragon Ball thing to do right.
And they didn't even get that.
Free tension and payoff in a bottle, and a perfect formulaic denouement.
No, they didn't even get that.
Any fight. All you gotta do is put two guys on opposite sides of a screen and do some CGI between them.
Just have them
it would have been
like
easier to do it right than to do
it wrong.
Whatever that was. It's like the movie is actively trying
That's so
to
true.
do
It would
as
have been
many
easy to do it
things
right.
to
That's
disappoint
hilarious.
fans as it possibly can.
Yeah.
Though, on the bright side, they do finally get Justin's hair looking almost right after he dusts himself off for the last scene. Good job, hair and makeup team.
Yeah.
In that last scene, they finally summon the dragon, and the way they do it looks and sounds really dumb, and it doesn't even look anything like Shenron when it shows up. Kind of just seems like they grabbed a random dragon off the Unity asset store, but the movie's almost over, and frankly, I'm tired. Once Roshi's alive again, Bulma threatens us with a sequel, and Justin runs off to go make out with Chi-Chi.
Well, the whole Piccolo thing was a threat of a sequel as well.
And then, for some reason, they get arguing about who'd win in a fight, and the final shot is them leaping at each other, like Andrew Garfield pouncing on the rhino. And I guess it's supposed to be ambiguous who'd win that fight, even though Chi-Chi fought to a draw against Mai, whose punches didn't even phase Justin, but whatever, that doesn't matter. The credits roll, and after the fancy CGI part, there is one more scene.
Yes, there is.
This came out after Iron Man, so of course there is. But it's literally just a lady walking over to a bed, and then the camera leans in like, who's in it? Who could it be? Oh man, it's the bad guy!
My God!
Dramatic music! This is an utterly meaningless shot that provides no new information and only serves to roll back the lone bit of closure the film's ending actually gave us. I don't think you could write a more perfect parody of this cynical, sequel-baiting trope if you tried. Yet it's not a parody. That scene and this entire movie is 100% serious.
It is,
about
and that's
trying
what's
to
sad.
milk the Dragon Ball name for all it's worth. It's just hilariously bad at it.
It's so
Dragon
awful.
Ball Evolution is what every good filmmaker working for a studio must fight against to make good films. It is focus testing, market research, demographic pandering, trend analysis, a franchise roadmap, and everything else that capitalism contributes to cinema, extracted and isolated from the meaning, artistry, passion, and basic storytelling ability that creators forced to work within that system bring to the table.
Damn.
It is a product, soulless and empty, produced solely to empty your wallet. And the system that produced it, the only system that could ever produce something like it, is the dominant governing force in all of our lives. There. Now that silly little virus thing doesn't sound all that bad, does it?
No.
Wait, fuck. I'm Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.
That was great. That was so good. Oh wow, we proper ripped into that movie. Oh wow. Oh, excuse me. That was great. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I haven't watched a Mother's Basement. We haven't done a Mother's Basement video in a while. We might do some, I'll go through and check out some other stuff. But until then, thank you guys very much for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what you should watch and discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys. It's all you guys next time.